Today's episode is brought to you by Squarespace, but more on them in a bit. No, not that White House. Though maybe not as famous to Westerners, the Russian White House, located right on the bank of the Moskva River, is actually the bigger of the two, with 20 stories, making it 119 meters or 390 feet tall, with an area of 732,000 square meters, or about 8 million square feet. Compare that to the DC White House's 4 stories and just over 5,000 square meters of area. That's a mere 55,000 square feet. If you've never heard of the Russian White House, it's probably because it's had a few different names and purposes over the years. It was originally the House of the Soviets, a name which it first retained even after the collapse of the Soviet Union. However, if you have heard of the Russian White House, it's likely because it played a central role in the country's tumultuous political history, particularly that of the early 90s. Still standing and in use today, the building is a testament to the will, adaptability, and resilience of the Russian people. The Russian White House was designed by a team of architects called Mosprojekt 1, led by Dmitry Chechulin. Chechulin had previously made designs for the headquarters of the Soviet state airline Aeroflot in 1934, but when the project was cancelled, he saved the plans and repurposed them for the White House, which would provide office space for the administrative bodies of the Russian Soviet Republic. Construction began in 1965. The White House, or House of the Soviets as it was then called, was the first building in the world to be made entirely of a prefabricated reinforced concrete frame. While this cut down costs, the novel idea took some experimenting, and the final building wasn't ready until 1981, after which the Supreme Soviet of Russia moved into the 132,000 square meters, or roughly 1.5 million square feet of office space from their previous home in the Kremlin. The cost of the project was estimated at over 94 million rubles. Soviet currency was heavily regulated, but based on black market prices, this was about 20 million USD. Chechulin and several other lead architects received the Lenin Prize for their work. The House of the Soviets had a short infancy and was thrust into the fray of history just 10 years after its opening. Known as the August Coup, in the summer of 1991, various hardliners of the Soviet Communist Party, both civilians and military officials such as Valentin Pavlov, the Prime Minister, and Vladimir Khrushchev, the head of the KGB, formed the State Committee on the State of Emergency and attempted to wrestle control of the nation away from Mikhail Gorbachev, who was at the time the General Secretary of the Communist Party and President of the Soviet Union. The coup used KGB agents to successfully capture Gorbachev at his holiday home, but they failed to apprehend Boris Yeltsin, then the president of Russia, possibly because KGB Alpha Group commander Viktor Karpukhin refused an order to do so. This ended up proving the downfall of the coup, as Yeltsin traveled to the House of the Soviets with a wave of roughly 2,000 pro-reform protesters who surrounded the building and built a barricade out of trash cans, benches, and logs. Yeltsin spoke to the protesters from a tank, declaring the coup attempt a reactionary response to change and progress. It was during this time that the Russian state media began referring to the building as the White House, a name which stuck. Many officials and soldiers witnessing Yeltsin's impassioned speech in front of the great white symbol of the Russian government started to defect, refusing to carry out orders from the coup leaders. Plus, as the events of the coup unfolded, Estonia and Latvia declared their independence from the USSR, showing that the Soviet Communist Party could do little to keep their power from slipping through their fingers. Finally, having lost all military support, the coup leaders were arrested in late August, starting with Vice President Gennady Yanev, who was detained in his office in the White House. Only Boris Puga, Minister of the Interior, escaped. He and his wife committed suicide before they could be apprehended. As a result of the coup, the Communist Party of the Soviet Union was disbanded, and all their assets were confiscated by the Russian government. The official dissolution of the USSR began just days after the coup members were arrested, and the White House returned to its role as home for the Russian Parliament and Supreme Soviet. Are you a creative looking to showcase your work online in a stunning, professional, and unique way? Well, this video's sponsor, Squarespace, has all the tools necessary to help you make it finally happen. With over 40 design templates, your website will look amazing on any device thanks to its mobile-ready responsive designs. Creating a website from scratch has never been easier thanks to their easy-to-use drag-and-drop functionality. Add text, photos, galleries, and more with no coding experience needed, and feel safe knowing your website visitors having a great experience regardless of which device they connect from. Each website also comes with built-in SEO tools like meta descriptions and keywords to help ensure that search engines quickly find and index your content. Their industry-leading hosting platform guarantees fast loading speeds for visitors no matter their location or web connection type. And what's more, they have 24/7 customer service options available, as well as an extensive library of how-tos ranging from customizing elements to developing complex integration strategies, so you'll always have the help and guidance needed when creating or managing your site. Squarespace provides you with powerful analytics and insights that reveal who visits your website and how they interact with your content. This insightful data includes page views, traffic sources, audience geography, and more. With this valuable information at hand, you can determine what is attracting people to your site and make the most of the data provided to you. So go to squarespace.com/megaprojects. You'll get 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. Stand out from the competition by creating a professional website with Squarespace. And now back to today's video. Even after the Soviet Union disbanded in 1991, the Supreme Soviet continued to act as a legislative body within Russia, and the White House was still officially referred to as the House of the Soviets. It was not until 1993 that Russian President Boris Yeltsin ordered the dissolution of the Soviet and the Congress of the People's Deputies. Since the 1991 coup attempt, widespread division had erupted in Russian society, and Yeltsin had lost much of the support for his neoliberal reforms, with many blaming them for increased economic instability in the country and others supporting further reforms to fix an economy that had been failing since the late 80s. This had even reached the point of violent street clashes in Moscow, the area in front of the White House being a particularly dangerous zone. By October 1993, some 600 militiamen with a considerable armory had barricaded themselves inside the White House to defend the parliament and the Supreme Soviet. Ultimately, the Supreme Soviet declared Yeltsin's order to dissolve the parliament constitutionally illegal, impeached Yeltsin, and refused to leave their offices in the White House. Claiming that a referendum held the April prior that had found a majority confidence in his presidency gave him grounds, Yeltsin declared a state of emergency and ordered the military to intervene. Though they'd previously stated their neutrality, the military obliged and sent tanks to encircle the House of Soviets. On the 4th of October, the tanks started to shell the White House, specifically firing into the upper floors. The idea was to cause confusion and remove snipers so that Spetsnaz troops from Vimpel and Alpha units could storm the building. Although the shelling was stopped occasionally to allow people to leave or surrender peacefully, the fighting surrounding the crisis claimed the lives of 147 people in total, 122 of which were civilians. This was the deadliest street fighting in Moscow since the Revolution of 1917. The tank shells caused a fire on the 12th and 13th floors of the White House, as well as charring most of its upper facade black. Although it destroyed 30% of the building's area, amazingly, it was renovated and put back to use just a year later, and despite protests from American architects to leave it black in memorial, the facade was repainted to its original white. Although the Russian White House was designed as an office building, office space takes up less than 20% of its floor space. The complex is elaborate and immense, including 3 levels underground with parking, ventilation chambers, and even bunkers. The building also has its own dedicated sewage system and an autonomous power supply, one of the reasons it's been a great place for political factions to barricade themselves inside of over the years. Rumors even claim there's a secret passage below ground that connects it to the Moscow Metro 2 line, although it seems unlikely due to the building's location on the river. Purposefully designed in a pyramid shape reflecting the style of Soviet modernism, the large underground levels support a main 7-story building from which a central 20-story tower rises, creating 2 wings on either side. The outer facade is white granite and marble, but the inside is more elaborately decorated with multicolored marble, fine wood, and gold. The main assembly hall of the White House is located in the central part of the 7th story. Here it serves the current purpose of housing the government of Russia, the nation's executive branch. As a result, it's the official workplace of the Russian Prime Minister, also known as the Chairman of the Government of the Russian Federation, currently Mikhail Mishustin. Serving in this capacity, it's had a number of upgrades, including the construction of a private restaurant on the 12th floor and a helipad. However, there's now a new emergency at the White House, though no one's barricaded inside this time. Rather, the roof has structural problems and the underground levels are suffering from major leaks. Not to worry though, the government has allocated 5 billion rubles for its repair, almost $70 million. After all, a few leaks isn't the worst crisis that the Russian White House has faced, and it's sure to keep its place in the Moscow skyline for years to come.